because today it's not anymore about taglines or polished marketing materials and impressions. It's about human connections. And so peer-to-peer will become the platform where this can happen.
You're listening to The Higher Ed Marketer, a podcast geared towards marketing professionals in higher education. This show will tackle all sorts of questions related to student recruitment, donor relations, marketing trends, new technologies, and so much more. If you're looking for conversations centered around where the industry is going, this podcast is for you. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. My name is Troy Singer, and each week, with the help of Bart Kaler, we try to bring to the higher ed community marketers that we admire or ideas that we think would be helpful to the higher ed community. Today, we're going to talk about peer-to-peer platforms with Diego Fanara. He is the co-founder and CEO of Unibuddy, which is a company that is gaining momentum here in the States.
Yeah, Troy, it's going to be a great conversation. I really like Diego. He's got some firsthand knowledge, and I think that his story, being an international student, he's originally from, and he'll go into this, originally from France and then grew up in Switzerland, but wanted to attend a UK or US school, and kind of coming in as an international student, the idea of wanting to connect with his affinity group, even in the admissions process and the enrollment process. And I don't think Diego's alone, because obviously the platform that he has helped found and build, and it's one of many that are out there. But Unibuddy allows schools to be able to engage and provide a structure and scalable experience for peer-to-peer networking, so that a student who's coming in can connect with other students that are similar to them, whether they're from the same state, whether they're studying the same program, whether maybe they're an international student. We always talk about that in higher ed marketing, is that, once we get somebody to apply, how in the funnel can we make sure that they get connected to the right group? Sometimes that happens on the campus tour. Sometimes that happens with, just student ambassadors connections. But these peer-to-peer platforms have emerged that really provide structure and scalability that allows the us as marketers to be able to manage that and to kind of, intentionally do that so that we can increase the yields throughout the funnel.
Although Diego does represent a specific company, I believe he does a great job of describing the advantages of the type of platform that they represent overall. So I think there's a lot to glean from this. And without further ado, let's bring in Diego. We are honored to welcome Diego Fanara to the show. He is the co-founder and CEO of Unibuddy, and he is also talking to us from another continent. Welcome to the show, Diego.
Hi, Troy. It's great to be here.
Thank you. If you would, for our listeners, if you could tell us a little bit about you, your company, and your role as CEO of Unibuddy.
Sure. So I'm, as you said, from another continent right now. I'm based in London. I was actually born in France, then grew up in Switzerland, and as an international student, dreamed of studying finance in the UK or in the US. And that's how the idea of Unibuddy and peer-to-peer emerged while I was going through this transition of looking for universities and being unsure of how to do this. And so the concept of Unibuddy is powering community, connecting prospective students with current students to share authentic information so that prospective students can have the right information and authentic insights to know how it's like to be in the university. And so Unibuddy sells software to admission offices so that they can leverage the power of community to increase their yield while doing this connection happen.
That's great. Thank you, Diego. I've been following Unibuddy for several months now, and I've been impressed. I know that you're developing quite a presence here in the U.S. with several schools, and I'll just encourage the audience, if they want to learn more about that, they can go to the Unibuddy website and see that. But I think today we want to really kind of focus on this idea of allowing prospective students kind of a glimpse into into the student life, into what everyday life is like. And, schools have tried to do that over the years with blogs and with, even with some of their social media accounts. But I think there's something about the idea and the advantage of these affinity groups in higher education enrollment, kind of with the idea of being able to identify the prospective student and their affinity, and then be able to match them up with, I guess, what you would call student ambassadors from the university. So, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, I think a lot of times it's kind of like the idea of connecting students with their tribe that they are, naturally a part of.
Yes, that's so true. And that come back to the purpose of what drove into this. It's the importance of community and tribe. We believe that students consider an institution because of their course, because of their location, or a lot of parameters, but they convert for the community. And they stay at the institution because they feel that they belong. And so what they need is to be able to see what the community is like, to meet peers. And a peer is someone of the same age, background, or ability as another person. It could be someone who shares experiences and similarities with yourself. And in higher education, this is an incredibly powerful notion, because all in all, it offers a more level playing field and uses the power of student diversity to connect people. So having those trusted voice for students of who they can assimilate themselves, this is where you can rise above the noise to meet someone who is currently experiencing this life and aspires for themselves. And that's when that connection happens. It unleashes students to have clarity and confidence to make the leap and make the right decisions.
I think that's great. And it reminds me of the classic statement that I hear from enrollment officers and admissions professionals is that, boy, if we can get them on campus for that campus visit, we can usually, statistics show like 80-90% of students who do a campus visit will matriculate. And I think what's fascinating to me is that you've created a platform that kind of takes a lot of the aspects that happen in that campus visit, which are people kind of recognizing and identifying that I can fit in here. I can see my tribe. Maybe they're engaging with tribes. I know a lot of schools like to kind of have a kind of an immersive campus visit where they maybe spend the night in a dorm with some student hosts. Well, that's a chance again to do that peer-to-peer connection. And I think what's fascinating to me is that you're kind of taking some of those aspects that we would find traditionally in a campus visit, and especially in light of COVID, in light of maybe international students or even students who are not within a concentric, real close location. You're taking this peer-to-peer platform and really turning that into an advantage for the schools to really start creating some of the same emotive connections that they have on those traditional campus visits. Is that kind of what you think?
Yes. Definitely. This is where we're trying to use digital and technology to make what universities were already doing, but at scale. And not at scale in a way so that we just allow them to spend less time. And so we just use technology to replace all human connection. It's actually to scale one-to-one intimacy. And that's what students want. Students don't want scale. And that's why thousands of prospective students email the admission team because they prefer this intimacy of a one-to-one conversation, either by email or by coming on campus. And so student-to-student marketing has the role of allowing effectively scaling intimacy of those campus visits for students that are not able to join the campus because they live far away or out of states or internationally. And so when we think of building Unibuddy softwares, either if it's our peer-to-peer chats or our Unibuddy events platform that we have, it's always with the mind of how can we scale intimacy. And the best way to deliver this is to invite students to be marketers themselves and be able to position the institution.
I love that idea of the student be marketers. So many times I think that even 30, 40 years ago when I was in college, I remember working in the admissions office as a student. I would go on the camp teams or I would be there for, student visits and I was, kind of a student ambassador. But I think this takes it to a different level because, I was there, but I was I think what your software is allowing them to do is to build those relationships in a dynamic way that fits today's world. And the student ambassadors really become more of the true ambassadors, where they're actually, rather than just giving a tour, they're actually, speaking on behalf of the university. And I think that, if I'm correct, your platform and probably others like yours create systems that allow the students to be able to have the freedom to have those conversations, but within the context of having some checks and balances in there as well.
That is so true. And a conversation on a peer-to-peer platform like Unibuddy is like chatting with your future and with someone that you can trust. And so that's where you feel the freedom to ask anything in a safe space that really will shape your decision. And I think that when by accepting that we're no longer in control of the student decision-making journey, we open ourselves to the diversity of student-to-student conversation. At the end of the day, when people feel that they can hear from others like themselves, that's where trust emerges. And trust is what great communities are built on.
That's great. I love that. And it really sounds to me like you're empowering the students, the prospective students, to make the right decisions, but you're also empowering those student ambassadors to really buy in more to the school themselves. And I think that's going to really lead to a better relationship as an alumni and as a donor and things like that. So that's great. I think that's been that's a wonderful, wonderful way to kind of take advantage of those affinity groups. Troy?
Would love to hear some specific examples. The concepts sound wonderful, but to help the listeners understand by offering some things that have happened that were wins for enrollment teams utilizing Unibuddy.
Yeah, so it's a great question, Troy. And what we're always asking institutions is impact on the value proposition of why they're buying Unibuddy and why they're buying Unibuddy in the first place. It's to increase enrollment yield and also the summer melt, that drop out before enrollment. And of course, this is where the power of tribes, community, peer-to-peer comes in, where we allow prospective students to build that sense of belonging and this affinity with the institution. And so we've seen in our case study with some institutions like St. John's University, USC, that have seen the rise of yield through Unibuddy from 15% to 27%, or a deposit rate, or 66% increase of enrollment yield. It's been awesome to see those case studies across so many institutions. But it's also definitely on the number, but then when you talk to the students, that's where we also go back to the user and see how meaningful this conversation has been. And what we love seeing is when our prospective students then become themselves student ambassadors when they join the institutions, because they took so much pride in hearing about the student to student that then when they enroll at the university, they come and they're like, hey, can I also become a student ambassador? I want to give back. And I think that's what, Bart, you're mentioning, that then we can follow this till the alumni and feeling really part of the institution community for life.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I really love the fact that, and I'm guessing, I mean, you've given some great statistics there with kind of 15 to 27% on the yield. And I'm sure there's different places in the funnel, whether it's, like you said, from, accepted to deposit, what those being able to have the student ambassador program and the kind of the peer-to-peer conversations at that point. And then even from that deposit to the enrollment and the matriculation, I think it's so powerful for that. But I have to probably even believe, and you might have some case studies for this, that those students who participated through a tool like this probably are going to be better retention students because they feel a part of the community. I mean, I know one of the challenges a lot of schools have is that, you have that, they have the summer melt already, but then you have kind of that melt from first semester to second semester where a lot of students never really got plugged in. They never really got connected in that tribe. And so they end up, leaving and retention rates go down. And so I have to believe that a peer-to-peer network like this, even at the beginning in the prospective student stage and in the enrollment stage, really impacts student life later on with retention. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. And that's related to the Unibuddy's mission, which is to empower every student to make the right decisions through their higher education journey. And so it's about a journey And wherever you catch the student journey within your community to belong, that's where you will have more likelihood for them to stay before enrollment, post enrollment. They just feel this extra irrational affinity with the institutions and be part of this.
Diego, for an enrollment executive, that this sounds interesting too. However, maybe not knowing if this would be applicable to them, what is a quick hit or maybe a thought that you would give them in order for them to think about it differently or become more interested enough to look into peer-to-peer platforms?
That's right. So it's a good question. So if they believe that community can change and impact the way students make decisions and how we can shape their confidence in joining their institutions, then I see that peer-to-peer becomes the platform for any student admission officers or marketer who I like to say could be community architect and be compared to the director of a play, which means that they would set the stage, the environment, and give their student community the platform, which means the tool and training with resources so they can talk to prospective students. And then that means they can get out of the way, because today it's not anymore about taglines or polished marketing materials and impressions. It's about human connections. And so peer-to-peer will become the platform where this can happen, and they can architect this community to shape the student belonging.
I love that. And I love the fact that you're talking about it as a platform, because it's interesting. I mean, post-pandemic now, I remember we had started using Zoom in our business maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And, it was a platform that we used. It was something that was helpful for us because we have kind of, different people around different locations. We're not centralized. It's a virtual agency. But during a pandemic, Zoom became a whole different thing. It became kind of a ubiquitous tool that was just part of everyday life. I mean, I might have either Microsoft Word or Google Docs that I use every day. Now I'm using Zoom every day in the same way. It's just part of my entire, tool set. And I kind of believe that platforms like Unibuddy are going to be part of that entire tool set as well. I mean, we talk about, every admissions office has a nice CRM, whether they're using Slate or something like Lead Squared or Salesforce. They've got those tools. They've got the tools of mail tools. They've got, texting. They've got all these different tools. I think that platforms like Unibuddy are going to have to be one of those tools going forward post-pandemic, because whether we like it or not, there's been a shift in the way that traditional enrollment happens. Decrease in campus tours are going on. Test optional is going on as far as the way students are being able to be marketed to. And so I think that the importance of increasing that yield percentage is going to be so critical to admissions professionals and enrollment professionals. It's going to be, because a lot of students are making decisions without ever setting a foot on campus. Is that kind of what you think too, Diego? Is that kind of where you're going with it?
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely see Unibuddy or all of the tools that you mentioned not replacing anything, but more as an enabler. That's something that was already existing. And so today, 2/3 of marketing happens in touch points outside of our control. But even if we are not on the stage because students talk to each other on those new tools, we're still very much part of the production. And so it's all about sharing our knowledge and help turn those student ambassadors into powerful content creators. So the more powerful the community, the greater its ability to move its members to belong. And so it all comes down to an enablement rather than replacing anything. And once we see it this way, then that's how we can leverage a maximum benefits from those tools like a peer-to-peer platform and Unibuddy.
Diego, we appreciate you bringing the information about peer-to-peer platforms and introducing our constituency to them. Before we sign off, would there be any other points that you would like to make on behalf of the community that you represent?
No, I think that the market has adapted so well during this pandemic. They've really adapted to a digital world that was unknown for a lot of people. And I feel we're all going in the right direction at the right speed. And so I'm very pleased to see how the market is getting together themselves as a community to make it happen so that we can really impact students' lives. And as leaders of this sector, we're setting the stage. We want our student communities to do what it does best. It's shaping the decisions that set young people on the path to their future. And so I'm really confident that we'll make it happen by leveraging everything that we have around us.
Thank you, Diego. If someone would like to reach you, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
So my email is diego@unibuddy.com. And the best way otherwise to reach our team is to go on our website, unibuddy.com, UNIBUDDY. So yeah, we're trying to build buddies all around the world to reach out and answer all the deepest questions that prospects might have.
Love it. And thank you very much for, again, bringing the peer-to-peer platform idea, enabling us to get it out to our listeners. Bart, would you have any comments before we sign off this episode?
Yeah, I really like a lot of what Diego talked about. I think that this peer-to-peer platform is such a great idea and such a powerful way for institutions to be able to really increase and enhance the relationships and really increase and enhance, that a lot of what's already going on. I loved Diego's point about the fact that, it's like a play and we might be the directors in the enrollment office, but at the end of the day, we're not the actors that are actually doing the communication, the emotion, the dynamic tribe building. But I think a tool like Unibuddy allows that direction to take place. It provides a platform for that. It provides the means and tools to be able to, manage those student ambassadors in a way that's meaningful. It's a way that kind of keeps them in boundaries. Certainly, one way you could do peer-to-peer networking is just to say, hey, student ambassadors at the end of the tour, give out your text, your cell phone number to everybody on the tour and let them text you. Well, that's certainly one way to do it. But a tool and a platform like Unibuddy actually allows you to scale it. It allows you to make it more professional and allows you to kind of put those bumpers in place so that, you know what's going on, you can understand it, and you can provide that freedom for your ambassadors to encourage them to be themselves, but you also have a little bit more direction to it. And so I really, really appreciated that. So, I think it's great. I would encourage everyone to look into these types of platforms because I do think it's going to be a big part of higher ed marketing going forward.
I agree, Bart. I also would invite anyone who either has experience with peer-to-peer or has done research on it to share with us what your opinions or your experience is. So thank you, Bart. And also thank you, Diego, and good luck to you and Unibuddy.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
That brings us to the end of another episode of the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast, which is sponsored by Kaler Solutions, an education marketing and branding agency, and by Think Patented, a marketing, execution, printing, and mailing provider of higher ed solutions. On behalf of my co-host Bart Kaler, I'm Troy Singer. Thank you for joining us.
You've been listening to The Higher Ed Marketer. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you're listening with Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to leave a quick rating of the show. Simply tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. Until next time.